Hey, this is H1. We're gonna be running it back with another episode talking about chess knowledge, chess wisdom, chess understanding again. And today I want to talk about the 6 keys to evaluate a position so that any player can know who is winning and who is losing in every single chess game that you watch or play. Okay? Now, let's get started. First things first, king safety, utmost important. Whoever has the least safe king, they're most likely gonna lose. Second thing, material. Whoever has more material is more likely to win unless you blunder pieces a lot. Then you need to stop doing that, especially you beginners under 1,000 elo. Once you stop doing that, you're gonna get up there in rating. Now, third thing, activity. Activity is really important. Sometimes it's even more important than gaining material. You see grandmasters sacrifice for more activity all the time because, hey, if your pieces is doing well in the position and your opponent's rook is sitting there like a pawn, then yeah, your active pieces is going to take over the whole setting of the board. Now, fourth, center control, putting your pieces near the center. For example, knight in the center of the board controls 8 squares. Knight on the edge of the board controls 4 squares. Knight on the edge of the board controls 2 squares. That demonstration itself means a lot to every single piece because we want pieces near the center controlling these 4 squares: e4, e5, d4, d5. e4, e5, d4, d5. Fifth thing, pawn structure. Whoever has the least amount of weaknesses in their pawn structure, whoever don't have isolated double pawns, whoever has the least amount of pawn islands have a better chance of winning in the end game. Now, lastly, space. Space gives you a lot of options to either attack on the king side of the board or the queen side of the board. Your opponent is gonna have the cramped space, which is good for us because we're going to be doing the attacking because we have more squares under our possession. Now I got a game for you today, and Hikaru Nakamura is gonna be showing us how to play the King's Indian defense the right way, and I'm gonna be going over these key principles throughout the whole entire game so that you understand how important it is. Let's get started in this game. We are gonna be the black pieces in this position. Let me get my stick. The black pieces are Hikaru Nakamura against his opponent Wesley So, which is the white pieces. It starts off with this move d4, knight to f6, which initiates the India game in this position. After knight to f6, c4, g6, the move g6 initiates the King's Indian defense. The King's Indian defense. c4, g6, knight to c3, and then bishop to g7, which gives us a fianchetto bishop. This is the structure of what it looks like to have a fianchetto bishop, which is targeting the longest diagonal of the chessboard. And you know, you might have noticed one thing. When you're doing the King's Indian defense, we're kind of neglecting the center a little bit. And white has a tendency to take the center with a move like e4. Even though this looks scary, it's not so scary because we are playing a hypermodern type of opening, which we are going to counterattack in the center later on in this match. Especially with this move d6, knight to f3, and you could play different ways with the King's Indian defense. You could do an immediate c5, you could do b6, do a double fianchetto in this position, or you can play c6, d5. There's multiple ways. It still stays a King's Indian defense, and that's why it's such a flexible opening to play on your own time. Knight to f3, castle king side, and they want to castle too, so they do the move bishop to e2. But we're gonna disrupt that a little bit with this move e5. Maybe, just maybe, this lets the opponent pause for a minute and think about taking this pawn, because I know most people is thinking, okay, can we just take that twice? You know, d takes on e5, d takes on e5, knight takes on e5. Well, we have this extra move, knight takes on e4. Well, queen trade first, then knight takes on e4. And if knight takes on e4, bishop takes on e5 because that bishop is undefended on this square. We're not giving away any piece in that option here. Now, after this move e5, white was like, okay, I don't want none of that nonsense at all, so I'm just gonna castle kingside here. And we're gonna get out of this opening right quick. After castle kingside, knight to c6, putting pressure on this pawn on d4, has to push or capture. White decided to push, knight to e7 here. And then we have this next move, knight to e1. Very important to do this secret move f3 and to put this knight on a better square. You're gonna notice here, white is going to be wanting to target the queen side and black is gonna want to target the king side. The ideas are very simple, especially since our pawns is headed in that direction. Just look at here, knight to d7, f5, white is gonna be doing this move f3, and this pawn chain is already heading towards the queen side. So it's gonna be a lot easier to attack with their strongest pawn on d5, giving us more space along this direction. Now, it's the opposite for the black pieces, which that's the side that we're on. Our strongest pawn is on e5, and we're gonna make the pawn chain a little bit longer, especially with this next move, f5 in this position, all right? f5, and they want to continue on developing pieces, and we're not going to give them any time at all to think, and we're going to do the move f4, attacking this bishop. Bishop has to move back. And now when you look at this and then you see this next move here, this is what we got out of the opening. And usually it's time to pause a little bit and think about those 6 key things that we talked about here. Who's controlling the center? Who's controlling more of the center? Who has more activity? Who's in time to attack who first? Who has more? Who has a better pawn structure? Who has a better king in this game? All these things matter. Who has more space? Now, you could argue that black has more space on the king side and white has more space on the queen side. Somebody might be able to argue that white has more center control because white has 2 pawns in the center and black has 1 pawn in the center. So you could be like, okay, white has a little bit more space to attack, a little bit more options on white side here. You can argue that, but I would say that it's about equal. And with the center closed, the center control really doesn't even matter that much. Center control matters a lot when the game is open and tactics is flying everywhere, but not now. There's no danger. Not yet. There's no danger yet in this position. Black's strongest side is going to be the king side, not the queen side at all. So they don't want to make more weaknesses on the queen side, more than they have to, of course. So we talked about it. And the main plans is simple for both sides, and that's why Hikaru Nakamura did this move g5, because they want to do eventually g4 or h5, g4. Remember what I said in the previous video, the methods of attacking, go watch that video. There are 2 ways to attack a castled king. One way, a piece attack. A piece attack. And usually with a piece attack, you want to start off with a sacrifice on one of these pawns in front of the king. So you're like sacrificing a knight on g2, etc. Or a pawn storm, which a pawn storm, you're just like rushing down the pawns to try to open this king up any way possible. Open some lines so that your pieces is behind them, and then you can like triple threat them. Triple threat them like a pedigree WWE. All right, lame joke, let's continue. After g5 here, knight to d3, because they want to move their pieces on the queen side, knight to g6, and then we continue on c5, knight to f6. Hikaru Nakamura's main goal is to bring the pieces on the king side, so when they start pawn storming, all their pieces is ready to pounce immediately. Like I said before, time is really, really crucial. It's a critical thing to think about every single move, especially with a high-class opening like this. If you're not willing to play this type of opening, don't do it because the king's Indian defense is very contentious, and you already know it's going to be a decisive game. All right. So after knight to f6, rook to c1, rook to c7, rook to f7, multi-purpose move, guarding the 7th rank, and then potentially it could be an attacking piece. I've seen some games when I was studying this. It can eventually be an attacking piece, maybe like the bishop moves to h6 after pushing h5, and it can go to rook to g7. You never know. Like, all these flexible moves is really important. Rook to f7, king h1, Black is getting the pawns rolling with h5, moving Hector. Hector's going in. C takes on, wait a minute, C takes on d6. A little mistake, but it made sense. C takes on d6, and then we have this move knight to b5. That was the main goal here. And Black messed up, a little inaccuracy, doesn't hurt anybody. A6, attacking that knight. But then they messed up a little bit more because White was supposed to put this knight to c3. Keep that knight in the center. Keep your pieces in the center, because if you put them on the edge, you have to figure out a route to get them back into the game. You gotta figure out a roller coaster route to get them back into the game. But you gotta realize something, that knight never moves anymore from that square on a3. Especially after this move b5, locking that knight in. Now, there's not really any good squares. Even if the knight went to c2, it's not doing anything because it's gonna be blocking a rook. It's gonna be blocking the rook. Knight c2, a5, just making sure that knight never goes anywhere forward into the game. b5, rook to c6, keeping tabs on this pawn, and you're gonna see that their next plan isn't really so great, and the engine actually agree with this. Rook to c6, g4, the attack is starting. Who's faster? Who has more threats into the position? Do White has more threats on the queen side, or what are they really attacking? Do they have a clear plan? Like, pause this video and think about a clear plan for the White pieces, because their plan was bad. And usually when you get to this high level, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know exactly what's next after you accomplish it. You gotta be 3 steps ahead every single time. Because after g4, queen to c2, okay, putting tabs on that bishop on c8, which is cool. And then the queen moved to f8 here, which the computer didn't like that much, but Black has a little bit of an edge. You see how usually during this opening, White has a little bit of an edge. That's what the engine likes the White pieces to begin with. But there's a human element to it, and after you play for a while, then it starts like, oh, well, your attack is useless now on the queen side, and Black has all the advantage. They're gonna have an attack and have all the threats into the position. Queen f8, queen f8, triple battery. How do you have a triple battery, but all those pieces on the c file becomes useless after bishop to d7. Bishop d7, rook c7, what's the main plan? What is White doing with all this power on the c file? There's no king over here. If there's a king over here, I'll be like, oh crap, White is doing a lot. they're gonna be losing pretty soon. But after bishop to d7, bishop to h6, if your opponent could do moves like bishop to h6 with all the pressure going on the king side, if they can slow down and still do development moves on, like putting the pressure on you still to do an attack, you already know Wesley So is like, dang, I'm in trouble and I need to figure out something. Let me just start trying to improve pieces. Rook to bishop to e1 here. Bishop e1, h4, and then we have this move f takes on g4, which was not the best move. Not the best move. They had to keep everything closed. And this move only prompted this next move, f3. And after you see a move like f3, all the advantage is for the Black pieces. They have better activity. They're in time to attack their king a lot more. Who has a better king? Whose king is safer? Our king is definitely safer because all these pieces are still on the queen side, and not aggressively on the queen side, but they're still passively on the queen side. And this rook on c7 doesn't really have a goal of why it's right there. Center control still doesn't matter, but the main things that matter is in this position is king safety and activity. Black is ruling in king safety and activity. So after f3, you see all those arrows on the board. You see this bishop attacking this pawn on g4. You see this pawn is threatening, pawn captures on g2 check. Pawn is threatening to capture this bishop on e2. Bishop is threatening this rook on c1. All the threats were into the position, and then g takes on f3 happens. G takes on f3 happens, and you might be thinking, oh, we get a free rook. We get that exchange. No. You can't think like that when you are playing the King's Indian defense. That's not a thought that should have ran into your head, because we got something bigger. Knight takes on e4. And this is the first one of the brilliant moves that you're gonna see in this game. This is the first of the brilliant moves you're gonna see in this game. And if pawn captures, rook to f1 is deadly, king to g2, bishop to e3, the threats just goes wild. And I'm not gonna show that variation because it's gonna actually still happen in this game. He tries to like close it up with this move rook to d1. He's like, okay, well, I'll let you have that pawn. This bishop isn't attacking the rook anymore. I'm cool, I'm fine, I'm Gucci Reza a little bit. But he still took the pawn on f3. Kara Nakamura still took the pawn on f3, and Wesley So was still begging for his life, like, hey, if I just get out of this alive. With rook takes on d7. If the attack doesn't work and I'm up in pieces, Wesley So could win. That's why we have to be very accurate in knowing what we're calculating. And that's why you gotta watch that previous video that I made on calculation to just get the foundation of it first. Because just to find moves like this next one, 4 brilliant moves in a row is crazy. Rook to f1, king has to move up because if bishop takes, queen takes on f1, which would be checkmate. King has to go to g2, and then bishop e3 happened. Just kept the rook under attack. And you might be thinking, okay, can't just bishop take on f1? Remember, h3 is horrible. h3 check, and you're gonna have to calculate all those tactics. But if I calculated everything that was going on in this position, this video would be over 30 minutes. Let me know in the comments if you want a video that long going over every single calculation in a game of chess. Now, bishop g3. This is what happens when you know you're being attacked too much and you're trying to give the pieces back because your opponent has too much activity and your king isn't safe. So you're like, please take my offering. Please, if only you just take this, then it's fine. And Hikaru Nakamura was like, okay, well, I'm gonna take it. H takes on g3. This attack isn't gonna go away just because you gave away your dark square bishop. And White thought he was like, okay, I take your rook then. And this rook is attacking the queen, so I should be good, right? That is completely wrong because we have this move knight to h4, keeping track of all the checks in the position, forcing moves. Keep track of all your checks, captures, and threats. That knight checks, king h3 have to, because if king h1, g2 is ugly, that's checkmate. King h3, queen to h6, not even caring about this rook anymore. Not that you could have taken it because that bishop on e2 was defending that rook, but just have more threats on the h file is insane. They have to keep on giving away pieces because the position is so ugly that just look at the sequence of moves that has to happen here. Knight takes on g5, king to g4, knight h to f3, and we got one more square for an attack, and we're gonna keep on checking the king, pushing that king upward. And when you push your opponent's king up towards your side, you're more likely to find a checkmate. So knight to f2, White is still trying to give away pieces so that we can get a checkmate, or like just settle things down. Maybe the opponent might fall for a mistake, but these grandmasters never fall for a mistake. They do tactics when they're asleep. Queen to h4, look at the sequence of moves. King to f5, rook to f8, bringing the last piece into the game. Rook to f8, king g6, rook f6 forces a checkmate because king takes on f6, knight to e4, double check, very crucial. Wherever the queen moves, there's gonna be a checkmate. If the king moves to e6, queen f6 is checkmate. And let me just show this other way. If the king moves up to f5, knight d4, the king moves back, and then we still got this checkmate on g5 here. Just want to show y'all that on the screen right now just to keep y'all attention. But if the king moved to g6 here, and White just conceded this checkmate with queen to g5. Horrible. Just nastiness is ugly. There's no way for white to get out of it. I mean, with 4 brilliants in a row, you have to just celebrate. You like, this is an amazing game. I can't believe Hikaru Nakamura doesn't play the King's Indian defense anymore. I wish he could just switch back to this so that we can see some amazing chess again, but maybe it just gets a lot tougher. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, we went over the keys to evaluating and we was correct on that. Like, black was winning. Sometimes you can mess it up. You can mess up the moves, of course, but it's good to know when you are winning and when you're losing. And just to give you that last little thing that I mentioned before, maybe like 5 minutes ago, that knight didn't move away from the a3 square. It's out of the game. If that knight was off the board, it wouldn't have stopped any of this that was going on the king side. And that's why you got to keep your knights activated into the position, especially in something this sharp. In something this sharp. And when a player or a chess player that is like a grandmaster is commentating on a sharp position, it means that there are so many forcing moves to calculate in that exact game. All right. Yeah. Thank you for listening. That was a good game. I'm glad that we got those tips out there. And yeah, keep on fighting till the end. Staying focused in chess and in real life too. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Peace.